Thanks again for joining us. And it's
All
been
right.
some time, but it looks like we have some positive swings. Things are looking pretty damn good right now. Feeling a positive energy.
Yeah.
And we made it through. We got some scrubs, but we're here. We're gonna make it.
A little scruffy, little, kind of scruffed up from the past 6 months, but
We're here. That's what matters. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So for today's show, we're gonna do a quick introduction to the Flourishing Premium Group, which a lot of people may not be fully aware of. We're gonna just explain how you could get access to that. It's actually relatively fast and easy. It involves Telegram, but we'll go through that. And the reason we're going to do that is because there's further information which we'll talk about and share, but there's so much more within the premium group. All right, a lot more information and the community backing it up and all that as well. Aside from that, FOMC meeting next week. So this has to do with interest rates, whether or not we think they're going to increase, decrease, the overall effects of the markets. There's discussion of the Ethereum merger, right? So that's actively going, or a lot of people are now becoming more aware of that. There's there's a lot of just support in general, perhaps showing a further recovery of the entire market. I mean, BTC up over 24% within 7 days. That could be also a sign. And we're seeing large altcoin rallies. So there's things aligning, and we're going to see what happens from here.
Yes. But first, let's disclaim them first.
We have to do that, of course. All right, disclaimer. We'll be right back. Of course, we always need the disclaimer. We always have that. But we got to explain what's coming up. That's it. Otherwise, we hit them with a disclaimer right away. They're like, what's going on? All right. So
I'm always hesitant to say anything until we pop that up, honestly.
All right. So one thing we definitely want to get across right away is the actual premium group. This is something that has been in discussions for quite some time. It's been finally implemented. And in order to join it, you actually do need Telegram. So this is an application. So you can get it on your phone, desktop, and this will provide you access to the premium market group. We're all aware of like social media accounts with like the @ but the link is also on the screen, which you can check out. I'll also put that in the description below. But you're basically interacting with Fate, who is the artificial intelligence aspect behind Flourishing AI, and she will provide you instructions on how to join. Now, of course, if you have questions beyond that, the Flourishing AI groups or their social media is in the description as well. But it sounds technical. It's actually pretty easy. And I know
if you're on Telegram, you'll see us promoting this like all over the place. Whenever you query a coin from Fate, it'll pop up with a link to get access. And what does that link do? It will go to Uplink, and it will prompt you to buy and burn AI in order to get access to the premium group. And this is just a trailblazing novel concept that in order to get access to a product or service that you actually have to burn supply of a token. And we're really excited that we're actually the first project ever in the whole crypto sphere to provide this type of way to do things. It's a completely new way. It's really cool. Recommend it.
There's an actual use case over here. I'm liking that.
It's a really novel use case for Uplink. Most of our customers, they go and they buy cryptocurrency in Uplink, but this is one of the more interesting use cases on the e-commerce side that we're really excited about. And further than that, the group of people in the premium group, there's a lot of smart guys in there, like, I highly respect as well. Like the whole group is just really gels, a lot of smart people. We have a lot of fascinating discussions in there about crypto, about markets, about like stuff that's emerging, before it even goes mainstream. So I highly recommend it. I post a lot of personalized stuff in there, private videos. People ask me private questions about stuff, and I'm fully available. So check it out.
Well, on that note, also, aside from, so just on the community aspect of that, there's a lot of other Patreon type groups that are out there, Discord groups, so forth. This is just the start of the premium group with Flourishing AI and Will. But as you had said, I want to emphasize the community aspect. There's a mixed spectrum of education, years of experience within the crypto space, and that's something that you want to also have access to, right? So it's knowledge and information on things that you wouldn't necessarily think about. So
It's a
knowing whose
community of
wallets are
people.
whose, yeah, learning all this cool stuff.
We were talking the other day that there's people in our premium group from the Mount Gox days, and they were giving us their experience of stuff at the times, and even like that was like way before even I was in crypto, and it was just fascinating to talk about.
Yep. Well, we get to see or then learn stuff that isn't necessarily on the news or always in front of your face. This is
Yeah.
a reminder of all the stuff that's happening behind the scenes. So let's get into what we might be seeing in the scenes. So on the news, right? So FOMC, that meeting will be next week. I think it's on Wednesday or Thursday. And this is their next discussion in regards to rates. And me personally, throughout the groups that I'm part of, everyone's saying that they're going to be increasing the rates. So that's not an official statement by any means, but that's everyone's thought process. So do you think that as well, or what are your thoughts on that?
It's definitely going to be an increase. It's just a question of how much. The markets are pricing in a certain type of increase. And if the FOMC comes out and surprises them with one that's higher than was expected, then the markets will dump down, right? You're like, oh, well, we overshot that, so we're going to reduce the prices even further. Because then this whole thing, like the interest rate kind of floods through the whole system, and then it cycles all the way back into the markets. It's a feedback loop, as it were.
So this is going to be on Tuesday and Wednesday, so the 26th and 27th of July, so next week.
So they'll release their statement on the Wednesday. It's always the second day they release it, like in the afternoon. So about a week from today, in the afternoon, we're going to see the statement from the FOMC, and it's going to have a whole video and all this stuff, right? So if we see like a 1% hike, which some people are calling for, that's on the very high side. It would be a historic rate hike that I don't think has ever been seen in one shot. That would really shock the market if they did that. So I don't expect them to do that personally, because I think they're seeing signs that the economy is starting to recover, and I don't anticipate they'll feel it necessary to do a 1% hike. Because
there's no reason to further shock the system, basically. Keep it subtle, do it little by little.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we'll bring up a couple charts here so you can kind of see where this event is happening on the chart.
So interestingly enough, on that, also before we get into the charts, because this is all actually a similar timeline. So the FOMC meeting is next week. We have the Ethereum merge. Yep. Actually, the date of that is in the official merge. Is that happening September, I believe?
Sounds about right. Yeah.
So September 19th or so.
I mean,
they never have like actual there's never set dates with this stuff. But
well, they usually it's based off of development timelines, which can get pushed back. Plus, they usually trigger it at a certain block, right? So it's like once this block is mined, it will be the new whatever, right? And so they have all they can do is really estimate it until it gets closer. Like September is still a ways off. So.
Well, what I'm getting at is we have FOMC next week. We have the Ethereum merge, let's say September. And then we have the Mt. Gox, the start of the redistribution of the BTC, right? So 146,000 BTC, not the price, but like Bitcoins. Which is supposed to be happening in August.
Yep.
So these three things, right? And then obviously there's other economical, political stuff happening as well, midterms, all this other juicy stuff. So when you're showing the charts, I also want to kind of take all that into consideration to see if there would be like a cumulative effect on it all, or if we're going to see like random stages per event, right? There could be like a drastic crash or whatever from each one.
Yeah.
And we actually said that on a prior show, on our Friday show, that a lot of people are taking the Mount Gox news as a sign of like FUD. So they actually, like last week we said, a lot of people are actually selling their BTC in thoughts of it going to like 10,000 or below. And look what just happened.
Yeah.
We did say that live. We said, don't do it.
That's right. Remember
perfect
that?
example
Yeah.
right there. Yeah.
Stick with us, guys. We'll treat you right. We'll get your head screwed on straight. So.
All right. So we got some charts. Let's pull those up because that will also show or the established of the recovery, and perhaps we can get into the rallies as well. So let me know when you're ready.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
It would be interesting to see. Again, the Mount Gox thing, from my personal opinion, we did the math as well, is less than like 1% of the actual supply of Bitcoin. So if they were actually to just dump all that, the effect of that would be like nothing, really. It's really just the marketing.
Yeah. Well, it reminds
even
me a
gimmick,
lot of
but
the Tether FUD that, from time to time you get FUD about Tether that pops up and then markets dump and then they, whales eat it up, right? Then it creates a conspiracy theory where it's like, well, did those whales pay news outlets to FUD Tether so that they could buy for cheap?
there's
Right, it's
always
believable,
crazy
isn't it?
conspiracy theories in the crypto world. Right?
Yeah.
And it's odd how some of them, 99.9% of them, sometimes come true, interestingly enough. We'll say that. All right, so what are we looking at? A lot of times you hit us with equities, you hit us with BTC charts. What are we looking at this point, at this chart?
So this is S&P futures. This is where I usually start. So the white is the futures for the S&P 500. And the futures chart is pretty much the same as the actual S&P 500 chart if you just chart SPX or SPY. The main difference is that it has the expanded hours price action in it. So as you know, traditionally markets close at 4 p.m. The futures markets will be open for another 4 hours after that. So they're open until 8 p.m. and you're watching all this price action for the next 4 hours that's trying to price in what's going to happen the next day. Similarly, the futures market opens, I think, at 6 a.m. And this is all in Eastern time versus the traditional markets will open at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. So even in the next day, you have another 3.5 hours earlier that the futures markets are open. So this is why I always track the S&P futures, not the actual S&P index.
Pretty smart.
So that is in trading viewer view there. It's ES1 exclamation point is the ticker. If you want to track it, I recommend it.
I'll do this as well. So I'm going to bring up the chart. So if you're watching this and you have your questions about the chart in particularly, I've seen members within the premium group ask, Will, what is this color? What is this for references? That's another benefit of joining the group. I'm just going to say that. That's your other plug.
Yep. And I have a lot of other stuff in here, right? This is a lot to explain. That would be more than what I could do in one video.
Yep.
Like down here, we have dollar index and bonds and all this stuff.
We've always said that data in general is extremely important, especially the measuring or further understanding of that data. So a lot of people might just be looking at this and saying, okay, it looks good. And then there are those that probably want additional information. This is your way of collecting that info. So that's it. And there's more charts than just this. So just putting that out there.
A lot of charts. So let's zoom out a little bit. A long time ago, I told you guys that anything under this yellow line, if you buy it, ultimately, if you're a long-term investor, you'll do fine. This line is the 15% per year in the long run line, right? So we can even zoom this all the way out on the weekly chart. You'll see how the S&P kind of performs on this line, right? So you can say, sure, like if I bought here in December of 2015, I was underwater for 4-5 months, right? This little tiny dip all the way back here is somebody being underwater for 5 months
It's like the return to normalcy, the yellow line.
Yeah, but then look at this. It just returns to normal, just like, yeah.
The
Came
biggest
right back up.
impact just by looking at that chart is COVID. I mean, look at the dip that you have
Mhm.
from that. That's like the clearest indicator of a huge drop and then coming back to relatively normalcy, right? And then going
Yeah,
above.
but these people, everybody was really selling here, obviously, right? Nobody expected it to go all the way down to basically bring people back to this level from 2016, right?
Gift of a lifetime, as some
Yeah,
would
that
say.
was a gift. Yeah. Well,
All right,
people thought it was the end of the world. People legitimately thought it was the end of the world. And then we came back here, right?
We could also give credit to some of the marketing agencies and the news for helping with that end of the world type mentality. All right,
But if you
where are we
zoom
at?
out in this way, it doesn't look too bad, right? You look at this huge price action. Let me get rid of all these tools here.
Well, the problem is a lot of people, unfortunately, don't also tend to zoom out. They tend to actually zoom in in regards to like a minute, 5 minute, 15, 30-minute chart, and they don't actually go back years in particular to see this type of growth rate, right? They're micro focused.
And this growth, really, if you look at this growth of the stock market, this is really the story of the US dollar going to zero. That is what this story is. Because there's always an inverse relationship of the price of stocks and the value of the US dollar. This dump happened at the same time that the value of the dollar has gone up. And this is all the story about inflation, right?
That's true.
You see this green line here is the value of the US dollar, and it's just kind of exponentially gone up as the markets have tanked. And this curve here is the CPI data. You can see how it was under this normal clip where it was going this basically a straight line, just diagonal, and then it just went parabolic, right? When the Fed started printing money, they turned on the money printer, you remember? And right after, after the crash, this was the money printer, right?
The banks were also able to loan out 100%. Oh yeah, there's more to it. Yeah, put it that way.
So this correction actually isn't as severe as it could have been this year. It could have been way worse than this. So, we get a 1% rate hike next week. Maybe we come back to here and then we touch the top of where we were before COVID crash. And this, I think, would cause a lot of bears to exit positions at a profit. So people that were shorting up here, I think a lot of them still have shorts open. But if we ever touch this top from February of 2020, they would close it.
Yeah,
because it's just the risk reward is too high for them. Like nobody would expect us to come down here, underneath into this price area, right? So let's zoom back in because that's the big.
Those that are tuning in as well. This is for equities, so this isn't the crypto aspect yet. We're going to be getting into that. We're just
but
showing correlations.
This is related. It's all interrelated to crypto. The bear market has highly controlled crypto's prices lately, as you know, as we all know. So we've been in this, what we call a descending channel the whole year, right? A very important thing happened recently. We had this monster CPI data come out, 9.1 CPI, which is really bad.
Consumer price index.
Yeah. It dipped for a little bit, then this immediately got bought back up. Immediately. Right? And to the point where we crossed over an important threshold, which was the middle of this channel. You see how here we were rejected at the middle, we were rejected at the middle again. Then we came up and we crossed above it. So what has happened here is we've created this kind of bottom formation where people have bought up all of these prices under the expectation that the Federal Reserve meeting will be generally positive. That's what this price action means to me, is that even though this CPI data was bad, they're hoping that the FOMC meeting notes will basically say, oh yeah, we're going to start tapering the restrictions and all this stuff and kind of backing off. So what I expect to happen here is we probably will go sideways, bouncing around this area for the next week. And then this will determine it if we go straight up to the top of this channel. If it's a positive meeting, let's see if I can find my drawing tool here. So a positive meeting will bring us up to this channel, and then we'll retest this area. A negative meeting will bring us back down, and then we'll kind of go back into this area again around the middle of this. A very, very negative meeting. I don't expect it to happen. But that will basically bring the bears to their capitulation point, which is here. This orange line here is a very important level. I even have this marked here. This is halfway back to the COVID crash price. So that means that the S&P has lost half of the value that it's gained since the crash of COVID at this point. This would be a natural place for bears to realize their profits.
Yeah.
And
another buying opportunity as well.
Mm-hmm.
If it goes down
if
to
we ever
that.
get there, that's a gift. That is a pure gift if we ever get to that price. And I don't expect it to ever get to that price for that reason alone. It would probably float above it in the worst case scenario for the markets. It probably float up here at the bottom here of this channel and then rebound. Just because it's so obvious.
Interestingly enough, just looking at, I'm always just subscribed to various like RSS feeds, news channels, and I stay away from political stuff. Just like to collect information. But it's always funny to see how the news sways from like positivity and negativity, like on and off, right? Depending on like the day or week. So everything is relatively, so far this week has been positive on that note. But they do keep talking about like this new heat wave, like this big heat wave, right? And that they're like emphasizing heat wave. So I think that they're trying to talk about like farming, produce, stuff like that. So I think anything possibly negative in this time frame might come from that type of a source. And I don't know if that alone could then relate to any type of a further downfall from here to make it hit that type of a level, so your 50% retracement. Aside from that, I don't know of anything else that's negative. I mean, we see these different variations within viruses, whatever. Everyone's like, we don't care anymore, right?
Yeah.
The only big thing is just this heat wave and then produce. That's it. So if FOMC meeting is positive, or even if it's not, we're still in that channel. It's still just a matter of time, right? At that point.
The heat wave, if that were to affect supply and food supply and things like that we're not going to see the effects of that for a while. So like in a situation where the heat wave kills tons of crops, right? Those are crops that, would have gone to people's into the supply chain months later. So that, you're talking, like in the fall, probably, I'm guessing.
Hopefully we don't see that though. But we always see the reports in the news. That's all I was getting at. In the news, you always see like heard of like cows dying from like heat exhaustion, another fire, granular fire, all this other fun stuff.
Yeah.
Other conspiracy theories, put it that way. Like you said, there's a time period for it.
That's something that, we are on a domino effect of global warming where it's just not going to get better over time, I'm pretty sure. But it's not one of these things that's immediate. It's a slow burn over many years. And one of these things, it's the old saying, it's the frog in the pot of boiling water, right? Where you're like slowly turning the temperature up and the frog just sits there and boils to death. That's global warming in my book. Like basically nobody wants to do anything because they're perpetually punting it down the road. And eventually one day, the water's boiling and everybody dies.
Yeah. We got, I think, hundreds, if not thousands or millions of years for that. Well, I'm not a scientist, but I don't know. That's just my thoughts. It's not happening within the next few months or years.
No.
All right.
So anyway,
let's get
the
back
other
to the
important thing is get back to the task at hand.
We
So this is a
gotta have
very
some
important
entertainment for this.
accumulation zone here. The expectation I have is that it's going to be in this narrow range. We'll either kind of hit the top of this, and then we'll figure out if we're going up from here, or we'll have a slight retracement. But I don't expect a deep retracement to where bears get to be like super happy at this point. And the main reason is because oil's really come down since Biden started fighting all these gas and oil companies. It's kind of funny. We called this top, right, a while back when this happened.
Yeah.
And this is a major, major influence on the CPI data is this price of oil, because, you know, the price of gas is later on derived from this, and all sorts of other related stuff, like the price of shipping, right, is related to this, like all sorts of stuff. Price of plastics, anything made with plastic, right? All sorts of stuff is related to this. So the fact that this has come down to a more reasonable level is very important. And people are seeing this and then taking this information and feeding it back into buying the S&P and every related stock, right? And that's why we have this accumulation here now. Right? Now, if we have the war in Ukraine suddenly ends, then the price of oil will just go right back down to probably the 60s, you know, down here, 70s, 60s. And then that would be very bullish then. And people would be buying this up quite aggressively then.
There's a lot of political stuff with that one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now we'll see how that's going to play out.
All right, let's get into the crypto component. So those that are watching up to this point, we do have a valid point as to why we are showing this information, because, I mean, let's face it, when you're in the crypto space in general, throughout social media, throughout YouTube, particularly when it comes down to charting, a lot of times people will just pull up BTC, Ethereum, BNB, or the large market cap projects and be like, here's what's going to happen. But very few actually go this route and explain everything that we just discussed now, and the correlation and all the other possibilities that could happen from here. So
you
that
gotta
goes
go
down to
top
researching
down
and understanding multiple markets, not just one in particular. It's multifaceted. There's different strategies involved with all of this. Keep that in mind.
Yep, it's all interrelated. You cannot take crypto in some isolated picture that's away from everything else. It's all interconnected. You could see really was obvious. I think I have turn this off. Yeah, so I have ES1, the S&P futures overlaid on my Bitcoin chart even, and you can see how related they are. They're highly related. You see the S&P, it's a little hard to see. Let me see if I can turn off some of
I do also have to admit, from a lot of the charts that I see, it's usually just, again, there are no overlays in particular. It's usually just the lines of TA signals, right? Or charting patterns of a specific project. You very rarely see overlays as to which you're demonstrating here and the significance of that. I mean, that is of importance for people that are watching to understand.
So look how related this is. So the green and red is the S&P, and the white here is Bitcoin. It's almost exactly the same chart.
Yeah.
The S&P is driving the price of Bitcoin. You have to understand, right? So you can't take Bitcoin itself as this isolated thing and say, well, I think it's going to have an independent price action from everything else, because it clearly doesn't. This is clearly the same price action. So this pump in Bitcoin we've seen recently, you could have easily seen that from the S&P side here, right?
So that begs, so here's an interesting question. Someone that's new to the space, right, and new to crypto in particular, but let's just say that they've had experience within equity stocks, whatnot. If they were to, just by looking at this chart, if they were then to apply that same knowledge to crypto, it's basically, then you're saying it's the same.
Yeah, I think that the big thing that's going to happen here I mean, if you look at this price action, how related it is, that means to me that the news events in the stock world is going to directly impact crypto, and that's going to be the main driver of the price of crypto.
So,
Like
but the big,
that
but
follows from that, right?
the big question is, and looking at your charts, it would be interesting for a time frame on that to see if one leads the other, and if that is the pattern, whereas the equities always is the leading factor of the crypto run. So that you could say, okay, I've got 2 hours left, or I got an hour left for it to get BTC before it starts to follow, right? So
Well, there
how can we
is a
get
very
access to that?
interesting relationship here around that.
So
And as you
Will,
know, go
we're
ahead.
gamers. We're gamers. Cheat codes, right? And we know if we're watching equities and it starts to go up, but then we go look at BTC and BTC is already up. What is that time frame, right? Is it, do we have minutes? Do we have hours to buy in and to follow that trend?
What you're talking about is arbitrage. It's a form of arbitrage where you find two highly correlated markets. One market makes a price move, the other one hasn't moved yet. And then you know that because the first one made the price move, that the second one is ultimately going to make that same move. And we saw that recently. You could have made a lot of money here because you saw in the beginning of June, for example, I'll give you a couple examples. So, as we all know, equities have mark hours where they're open and hours where they're closed, whereas crypto does not. Crypto's
Yeah, it
open
never
24
stops.
hours a day, right?
Yeah.
Now we saw here in the beginning of June that we saw the S&P just dump around June 9th, June 10th. You see this dump here? Where it's just like red candles all the way down to the bottom. And then Bitcoin at this time was just, it hadn't done anything yet. It was just trending sideways this whole time. You see
Sure.
this?
There was a little bit of a delay if you're looking at that specific time frame, like days
So,
actually, a day's
yeah,
worth of delays.
yeah.
Interestingly
So
enough.
the play here, very interestingly, was to short Bitcoin because you know they're so correlated that Bitcoin ultimately would dump in the same way that the S&P did. And lo and behold, the moment the S&P closed, Bitcoin dumped. You see how it just went straight down. So this is a perfect opportunity to see this arbitrage right here.
Very true.
This was an arbitrage of a lifetime.
That's actually what I'm curious to look into in terms of like metrics to see the time gap or find the average time gap between those moments, those arbitrage moments
They are.
from the past.
There's many of them. There's many of them. You just have to watch. Similarly with
Look at today's. That's what I want to know then. Today's cheat code. Let's see.
and it happens multiple
Put you on
ways,
the
right?
spot with
There's
that.
one between equities and Bitcoin, and there's another one between Grayscale's products and Bitcoin too. So you'll see often one or the other will have a price action, and the other one's delayed in the same way.
Very
In
true.
the same way. And in fact, I should even overlay Grayscale's product on top of Bitcoin, and you'll see how there's always this lag. And you can make a lot of money just playing that arbitrage over and over and over again, waiting for it. I actually have it right here. It's GBTC. Let's see if I can bring it up. Scale B 30. So this, we'll switch this to candles.
We also had a question in the chat in regards to fate. So again, that's the artificial intelligence aspect behind Flourishing AI, and if she's able to see those specific correlations.
She does see some of them. She doesn't track all of them. It's just a work in progress to get all of them in there. There's a lot of different ones to build upon. She will correlate all of the crypto markets against each other, and she'll correlate the Grayscale products with crypto. But she doesn't do the generalized S&P correlation with crypto.
That's a whole nother data set and
level.
learning phase for her then. Yeah.
So it's a little bit hard to see. So we'll close off the S&P here. And you'll see here that Grayscale's, let's see if I can bring this up.
And there's still a big difference, by the way, with GBTC. I just actually looked it up. Where was it? It's at 15, so like 16 right now. Still a difference.
So this is Grayscale's product here versus the actual Bitcoin. Grayscale is in this blue color. Let's see, maybe it looks better on the daily chart because of the hours that it's closed.
Now we could see the candles though, the wicks. I mean, it's again, it's a correlation.
Yep, same type of deal, right? And you have these gaps, for like example, the end of May here, huge gap. July 4th, huge gap here, right? So this is fascinating because there was an arbitrage even recently around July 4th weekend where Grayscale's product hadn't gone up yet and Bitcoin did. And then you could have bought Grayscale's product knowing that it had to come up to meet Bitcoin around after July 4th. Right now, it doesn't seem like there's any arbitrage with Grayscale's product yet. We'll see here if this continues upward to close this gap. So the main gap to watch right now is between where we are now with Bitcoin and the bottom of this price action from before. So this kind of range of prices here typically gets filled. So we'll see a pump up to the FOMC and people pricing in what they think will be a good meeting, and then it'll come back down because that's too high too fast given the macroeconomic conditions that everything is in right now.
True. Another interesting question by Sewell. So S&P correlation in general being strong versus perhaps having like a disconnect in the future, so is this always going to be a pattern? Is there always going to be this correlation? Is this because the crypto space is still relatively new? Volatility will start to flatten out, or is this always going to kind of be similar correlations and having arbitrage opportunities like this?
So the correlation between everything tends to go up dramatically during bear markets. Everything seems to follow the same pattern usually during a bear market. Once the markets start going sideways, where we have kind of this transitionary period between a bear and a bull market, there will be this kind of sideways market where everybody's getting wrecked because everybody's trying to guess if we're in a bull market or a bear market still, and then they'll be often wrong. And what will end up happening will be like this high volatility sideways action for a while where it can't decide. And then everything will start getting decorrelated during this period of time. That's what will happen. And then after that phase, there'll be various different bull markets will start happening in different things at different points in time. That's how it will typically play out.
I think as we go along, personally, I just think that there always will be a correlation aside from those very moments when you have those strong bull pennants. And that's kind of really it. If there's always money to be made, I mean, that is the whole point of these arbitrage situations. If that gap is increasing by such a huge gap, people are going to be flooding to that to then close it, right? That it's never going to be that grand. So that game of like cat and mouse, always trying to make money, which is the name of the game, will always pull them and keep them somewhat correlated in retrospect.
Yes, and this is a form of market making, right? So that Grayscale's GBTC has to be at a certain multiple of the price of Bitcoin. And whenever it diverges from that price, market makers step in and they'll buy and sell it until it matches up, right? So that is the job of market makers, is to make sure that actually happens. And there's market makers paid by the people that run these stocks. You're actually required, in order to be listed on the NYSE, to actually have 2 market makers that you're actually paying. This is their sole
money.
job.
Yeah, a lot of money.
Yeah, but independent market makers will also step in. They're typically like hedge funds and stuff like that, and they'll also be doing this on the side, looking for these opportunities.
Yeah. All right, looking at this chart and just being cognizant of the time, looking at the chart. So at BTC, we're at like the $24,000 range right now. At that very time frame, FOMC meeting, if it's positive, we are looking to see a continuing uptrend of that. However, again, in terms of like a channel aspect, what would be, or are we at that? Just looking at the channel now, are we at that breakout point to another pattern, or
we've broken out in pretty strong volume out of this pattern. So this is a very bullish sign that we've broken out. We'll see how this candle closes, but this looks really good, which indicates to me that we are solidly above this, and we're going to close in this price action here, running up into the FOMC meeting.
Okay. And where do you think, obviously the next question is, where next? That's always the trickiest question, right? You got to put on your, get the fortune globe out. Let's see where we're going from here.
So really basic TA here. We're clearly not going to hit anything over 28 because there's just too much price action here. That's all of these candles from earlier. It was just consolidating here. So if we get into around the 28 area, that's an obvious sell point, which is around here. So this is kind of the upper limit right now, running into the FOMC meeting. So we'll see how far into that we can get. But, like I said, 15, this is mainly 10%. Going to be dragged up from the stocks side, from the equity side.
So another possible 10 to 15% increase from here. That's I mean, just math from here.
Yep.
Okay. And that's on a positive note. Now that.
And you'll see here, there's even room for equities here too, right? So even equities, we could run up to the FOMC, hit the top of this channel similarly. Right. So there's room for these to come up as well in the same way.
But that's actually of interest because right now this is, so looking at the BTC chart right now, we're already at the breakout point. And then the prior chart looking at the equities, just as you said, that has room to actually grow, which then it should, which then obviously is the push of BTC up to the 28 range.
Yep.
So that is your forecasting indicator, basically, looking at those two.
Yep, that is my forecast.
Makes sense.
Yep. And we see here too, we'll look at Grayscale for a little bit. This is Grayscale's large cap fund.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember how many people were here, but I was recommending people to buy it back here when it just opened in 2020. I remember when this opened, like before the COVID crash, I was like, buy it, buy it, buy it, buy it. I bought a lot of this here.
I think we were live that time as well. I think we were on a video or Flourishing video on Friday when we said that.
Yeah, so there's an idea of a custodial IRA. So I have custodial IRAs for my kids, which I highly recommend. There's a lot of tax advantages to having that. And so it's a type of Roth IRA. I bought a bunch of this for them and put it in their custodial Roth IRAs. And then, we rode the wave up because we knew that this was very underpriced based on what they had. So this is bottomed pretty solidly here. It's come all the way back down to their original price action. So it's going to be, I don't think it's possible for this to really go any lower than it has at this point.
Oh, we're seeing a lot more institutions buying into this specifically, and a lot of that is publicly made, by the way. So if you know where to look, the information is there, and the amounts and accumulation. So
yeah, and they've actually rebalanced it too several times, where it had a different composition back here than it does now. So that's the other important thing to note, is that they keep changing the composition of what's in this fund. Right now, it's just maybe 3 or 4 coins. Back at this point in time, it had like 6 or 7 different coins in it.
What I'm curious to know, just on this note, real quick, I think it was, BlockFi. And I think there are other platforms actually removing GBTC from their platform. Or perhaps just as, so I'm just looking up for like collateral. So in terms of like loans, right? Which I guess makes sense because they want to get out of the leveraging and the loan aspect. So seeing with everything else that happened in the past, I guess that makes sense for collateral reasons. I got to
Well, the
see if they actually
volatility,
store
like when
something.
you look for collateral, you want an asset that's not very volatile, because high volatility and collateral for assets causes margin calls to happen. And when you have a client, think about the institution. If you have a client that's been margin called, do you really want to become a debt collector for like all these clients?
No,
Because they're, nobody wants to do that. Let's be honest.
nope.
So
Definitely
that's,
not.
I think, more the reason more than anything.
All right. We've been looking at, so this is GPT, so the
This is
grayscale.
Grayscale GDLC, their large cap fund. And we see that this has already bottomed, which is a very positive sign for crypto. We've closed this gap here from mid-June. The next price action here, relating to this pump will bring GDLC to close this gap in the 15 range. And then we'll see what happens from here. So this is a natural resistance for GDLC around here, around 16. But still, I mean, that's a pretty healthy, that's a 47% pump. Right?
Looks good to me.
That's pretty healthy.
Yeah. All right. Aside from this, we've looked at BTC. Can we pull up the other larger caps? So ETH, and if you have BNB as well, or
yeah. So I always graph these together. I kind of put them in the same boat as these major large cap smart contract based cryptos.
trying to see which. Sometimes our faces block the months, but they're stacked, so we could see the one from Ethereum. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the top is Ethereum. The bottom is BNB. As you know, we have the merge coming up in September. It's around here somewhere. Who knows? Maybe it's the end. Maybe it's the beginning of September. This has formed a pretty nice bottom. This has formed a pretty nice bottom.
They're all at like the ceilings right now, just looking at the lines. So it looks like they could all just break out from here.
It's hitting this region, right? Right. So we can back out of this real quick before we go further into this and take a look at the total market cap of all altcoins in terms of Bitcoin. This is the inverse of Bitcoin dominance. This is how the Bitcoin dominance chart was originally derived, is from this chart. And we can take a look at, take this off, that even this, we've had this run up in altcoins, which everybody was profiting. And lately, I'm sure you've seen it in a lot of Telegram channels. And it's kind of reached the top here. And now this is starting to come down as well. So if this comes down, then likely these will come down too. And this makes sense a little bit. Come down for a little breather. Yep. And then that will then create the beginnings of a type of, what do you call it again?
Altcoin season?
Sort of, yeah. So, yeah, I
think BTC still has to make its run up more than 10 or 15% for altcoins to really kind of start. Usually BTC has a significant pump.
So the other thing to realize here is that all this money has left the markets entirely on the sidelines. It's like under people's mattresses or wherever. It's going to come back into the markets first in Bitcoin, then it's going to go to large cap alts. So what usually happens there is Bitcoin will pump, which will then cause this total to the Bitcoin dominance to also pump, which causes this to go down.
Yep.
Right. So all the altcoins will go down against Bitcoin, which will then cause these to kind of come back down and retest this region. Right. That'll then drag this here. And then after that, Bitcoin pump. Then that money will go from Bitcoin into altcoins, right? Because then the altcoins will be underpriced, right?
It's a game. There's a sequence to this. And this is a sequence that...
It's a game of chess, which will then cause this to happen, right?
This is an ongoing cycle. This is something that happens on repeat after repeat. So even if you're new to this, take the time to look at these trends and get used to them, because again, this is going to happen over and over and over again. This isn't just a one-off item. This is going to keep happening. That's why they literally say altcoin season, BTC dominance. It's all cyclical. It all happens over and over again.
It's all interrelated. But this is typically how money comes back into crypto every single time. And I've seen many bear markets in my day. It'll come into Bitcoin, pump this, all the altcoins are dumped, then that money will then buy the cheap altcoins and then pump them.
I feel like it's always part of the plan. As funny as that sounds, like big money, right? They always come in, boost that, make your earnings. Everything else drops. Take those profits, that spread, put it back into altcoins, double it up, or do it again. It's on repeat.
And then what this will then create, this pattern plays out in this way, is you create the beginnings of this pattern. Let's see if I can find it here. Like an Elliott wave pattern, right? So then this would become 1 with a deep 2, and then you'd have a 3 and a shallow 4, and then a 5. Right.
So I'm going to add the previous caption from before. This is in regards to the premium group as well, because right now you're just talking about specific patterns aside from just the charts, right? So there are different types of signals, candlesticks, you name it. Technical analysis, you guys have terms everywhere. So for those that are watching us that want to know more about it, this is the time to check out the premium group, which again is available through the Telegram app. So this is both a mobile and desktop version. You just connect it to a mobile number. It's fairly simple to go through, but you're basically just going to be contacting the Flourishing crypto bot. And if you're new to it, you just do the command /start, and it'll provide you instructions on how to join it. Relatively easy. I'll probably make a video exclusively on how to just join it. But Will can go over these different patterns, the charting, the overlays, everything that we've just discussed.
Yep.
Will's the source. He's here. Ask him questions. We're live. Now is the time to do it.
I swear I'm not from the future. So
yeah, people have been watching the prior videos. You'd be amazed as to what we've discussed. A lot of the stuff that we've mentioned in the past has come to fruition. So I'm proud to actually say that as well. I mean, we have, I hate to say even the word predicted, but a lot of those events have occurred. So there's some important knowledge being shared here.
And the last thing I want to mention here is I kept talking about this, guys. I kept talking about ProShares short Bitcoin ETF. Right? Remember this?
I remember you talking about that last week, but I haven't seen any updates on that.
Remember this green here? This is when they launched it. It was almost the exact bottom of the market. Their last ETF they launched, just for comparison, I can find it. Was here for reference at the almost the exact top of the market. Things to think about.
When was this actually? When did that go live?
The short one?
Yeah.
This was June 20th.
So it would be, so I mean, the ETF in itself has grown as well. So perhaps that could also be a reason for the growth, not just of that ETF, but BTC in itself as well, right? That's just another positive effect, possibly.
Yeah, so think about how a short Bitcoin ETF would work, right? So you buy their ETF, and that establishes a short position in Bitcoin for the customer. So ProShares has to establish a long position in Bitcoin in order to deliver the short position. They have to basically have the other side of that trade. Right? So ProShares has to, in preparation to launch this fund and to meet the customer demand, actually buy a whole bunch of Bitcoin. Does that make sense?
Yep.
In much the same way that ProShares, to launch their long Bitcoin ETF, had to short a whole bunch of Bitcoin.
Yep.
up here.
Interesting. It's crazy. There's always just so much stuff happening, but like it is actually kind of difficult to keep up with everything that's happening. Like it's really is like a full-time, if you want to do it the right way, it is like a full-time job, like waking up, looking at charts, digesting information throughout the day, then updating information, taking notes. This is something that's relatively difficult to do when you have a life in itself like happening, right? I mean, that's the reality that we're in.
Well, this is my life, so this is why I do it for a living, because I enjoy it, and I don't find it to be like exhausting like many people do. So,
Well, all right. So time wise, I want to end it on another note. So this is in regards to Fate herself. For those that are watching that got up to this point, Will, can you give us a better explanation as to what or who Fate is? Because I keep saying artificial intelligence. It's different than a trading bot. We like to stay away from the word bot and go with AI. But on that note, and then ending it with anchor mode and following your suggestions, right? Because Fate, again, you could tailor that anchor mode. So just give us a little more about Fate herself and anchor mode and basically following your trades, utilizing Fate.
So Fate, there's a difference between an artificial intelligence and a bot. And that difference is the ability to learn, right? So Fate uses neural networks in order to learn and improve herself over time. That's the main difference. Bots just act with a simple rule set, and they will always follow the rule set. And the problem with that is that markets change. They change the dynamics. It's a physical system with different inputs, and those inputs change over time. And for that reason alone, any bot that has a hard-coded rule set in it will ultimately just have a certain span of life where it will be generating alpha and profitable, and then it will just stop one day. And it'll leave people to just keep trying to tweak levers and try to play with it over and over and over, because they haven't realized that the markets have adjusted for the fact that these bots are in there, and now they're doing something different. They exhibit a different behavior. And this is what the impetus was to create Fate as a learning system, so that she could figure out, as time marches on, what are the important inputs in the market, how are they related, and how can I adjust how I trade based off of how the dynamics of the market are evolving over time.
Okay, big difference. So bots,
big difference.
They do what you tell them to do, and that's it. Fate, you provide suggestions into which she makes her own decisions, or you then also help basically learn. Big difference.
Yeah, any good learning system will have a mentor, right? Think about the idea of a toddler and just leaving them out by themselves to learn how to live. Like, I don't know, I'm not gonna like give you milk or anything, just go figure it out. Obviously that's a bad idea. No parent would ever do that.
Yeah, we gotta update the disclaimer for that one.
Mentor Fate. Yeah. Like I do help to guide her here and there. It's like, okay, don't go down this path, this is bad, do this, so I'm doing a little guidance here and there. And we've found that this is the best approach to any sort of neural network learning system, is to kind of help it along the way. And so that's that.
On that, Fate herself, again, she is publicly available. So you can go and you can actually, this is via Telegram, the link I just put on the screen now. So ask Fate Alerts. You could go into Telegram and join the group. And within that group, it's also a community. So there's engagement there amongst members, but you could also see updates from Fate, and you could get her opinion on all the projects that we've discussed and others. So there's different variations or commands that you can use, but you can interact with her. Go for it. Go send a DM, mess around with it. The best way to learn is by actually actively utilizing it, using it. Mm-hmm. There is one aspect to it, though, that we can end this on, and that's with the actual management of the custodial wallet and actually utilizing Fate for trades. And that is the option of using an anchor mode. So in an anchor mode, you guys have updated so that you can actually follow other people's strategies. So can you just explain again anchor mode and then I guess why 99% are actually following your your activity on that.
So we have the ability to follow somebody else's anchor mode. It's called copy anchor mode. If you want to know how to set it, just ask in the community channel, and any number of people will tell you how to do it. So crypto is different than stocks. In stocks, you only trade and you buy shares or sell them against dollars. There's only one way to trade a stock. The difference in crypto is that you can trade any crypto to many other cryptos, and it's more like a forex currency exchange in that way. So you always have to decide which currency, which crypto do I want to gain over time, and it's going to depend on a whole bunch of factors involving kind of the macroeconomic and the market conditions and things like that. Obviously, you don't want to gain Ethereum during a bear market because Ethereum dumped severely during the bear market. Would have been way better to gain a cash position or stable coins, right? Stable coin position, right? So what we do is we have this idea of an anchor mode where you can tell Fate, I want to accumulate Ethereum, or I want to accumulate Bitcoin, or I want to accumulate Tether, right? BNB, whatever. And then she'll go do that, and she'll set that as her goal. The smart investor knows when to switch it up, right? Accumulate Tether in a bear market, switch it to accumulate BTC in the beginning of a bull market, in the middle to late stage bull market, start accumulating Ethereum, and then you switch it along the way, right?
So the other thing is that goes back to what I was just saying about life in general, work, family, fun time as well. We also have to have fun, but if you're not actively aware as to what's happening in the market, utilizing Fate and then following somebody else's anchor mode is kind of lessens the stress, right? It helps with that. So that's a big key right there. Definitely helps.
Yeah,
you'll be able to sleep a little bit better at night.
Manually trade, and the thing is too, like if you're manually trading, you are at a huge informational disadvantage to everybody else using all these tools to do this stuff. And you're up all night like worrying about your trades. Like that's just no way to live, honestly.
Very true. Yeah, a lot of sleepless nights, I could say that. All right. We definitely had a lot of information here. So Will, obviously, thank you for your time on that, for this market talk segments. We definitely need more of them, regardless of green or negative days, red days.
I've been pretty busy with Uplink, I have to admit, and that's been why I've been kind of scarce in the community. And my apologies for that, but we're getting things sorted.
So we will say the conversation has still obviously continued within the premium group, though. So that although you are working on Uplink and Fate, you are still active within that Telegram group specifically, which is also good. So in time, when you have spare time, we can do these videos. And for those that want to learn more about the overlays, the charting, technical analysis in general, join the group. All the links and everything will be in the description below. And Will is there. He's always on Telegram. He may not be available for other things, but he's always on Telegram. That's it. He makes himself available. Sure. That's what's important.
Awesome.
All right. So
this is a great video. I love it. Yeah. It's been good.
So I will actually see you in the premium group as well as I'm sure others. Thank you again. And let's see what happens this week or into next week.
All right. Best of luck to everybody with your trading, and hit me up with any questions.
All right. Thanks.